A happy Chinese New Year to all brothers and sisters. We wish all a prosperous and safe Tiger Year ahead. Welcome again to another Sutta studies with Brother Benny. Today we will be studying the Sutta Suciloma Sutta. A brief introduction to our speaker again. Brother Benny has been a student of Buddhism for many years and is grateful for the teaching he received from many compassionate teachers. As such, he helps various Buddhist organizations with their outreach program, including sharing of his understanding of the Dharma and editing Buddhist publication. He currently assists the Young Buddhist Association of Malaya with their non-sectarian Buddhist journal, Eastern Horizon, and has edited 9 books on Buddhism. He is also the editorial consultant and contributor to the Religious and Belief volume of the Encyclopedia of Malaysia, and his writings has appeared in Journal of Malaysian Branch of the Royal Asiatic Society, Kajian Malaysia, and in Nurturing Child and Adolescent Spirituality, Perspective of the World Religious Traditions, published in the United States. Brother Benny studied in both University Science Malaysia, University of Malaya, where he graduated in a Bachelor of Arts, Honors Education, and Masters of Public Administration, respectively. He is currently employed as a senior VP of a multinational corporation, as well as a director of some related companies in Malaysia and in the United Kingdom. Welcome again, Brother Benny, and it's all yours. You can start anytime.
All right, thanks, man. Okay, let me just share the slides. Okay, can you see the slides now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Okay, okay, so I think Happy New Year to everybody, right? We are still during the 2 weeks Chinese New Year period, right? Okay, so today we're going to look at another discourse from the Sutta Nipata called the Suciloma Sutta. Now, if you are familiar with the Pali Canon, you find that there's also another discourse by the same name, same discourse, exactly the same, in the Samyutta Nikaya. Just a minor thing. You see, the Suciloma Sutta, it is capital S and small n, not capital S and capital N. So if you put capital S and small n, the N stands for the Nipata, so it's Sutta Nipata, chapter 2, Sutta number 5. If you put capital S, capital N, that's the Sutta Nipata, that's the Samyutta Nikaya. All right, so it's a different collection altogether. So this discourse is also found in the SN 10.3, which means the Sutta, the Samyutta Nikaya. All right, so that's in chapter 10, Sutta number 3 in the book of Connected Discourses. That's the Samyutta Nikaya. In that section, there's actually a whole section. It's called the Yakka Samyutta. Yakka Samyutta, which means that the whole section talks about the Buddha's discourses or the Buddha's dialogues with the Yakkas. All right, so in today's discourse, we're going to go to find out more what is this dialogue between the Buddha and this Yakka called Suciloma. All right, so you have exactly the same discourse in the book of Connected Discourses, which is the Samyutta Nikaya. That will be Sutta 10.3. So don't be surprised that you find this same sutta appearing in two different parts of the Pali Canon. All right, just as you have the the Satipatthana Sutta, Mahasatipatthana Sutta, you have the Mangala Sutta, Mahamangala Sutta. So they appear in different parts of the canon. All right, so this is one example. So today we're going to look at Suciloma Sutta. So I'll take you through the discourse itself. So here it says, thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was staying in Gaya at the Tamkita bed, the abode of the Yakka Suciloma, translated as needle hair. And now on that occasion, the Yakka Kara, which is translated as rough, and the Yakka Suciloma passed by not far from the Blessed One. So the commentaries for this discourse, for example, explains that actually the Buddha deliberately went to this place in Gaya because he was expecting these two yakas to pass by. The Buddha, as you know from your understanding of the teachings, that he has that ability to know which beings have got that potential to be enlightened. So it is said that the Buddha saw that both the Yaka Suciloma as well as Kara already had the conditions which are right for them to attain the first stage of sainthood. So because of that, he went to this place and where Suciloma and Kara, the two Yakas, would be passing by. Okay, so that's the context why the Buddha was in Gaya. Now, okay, so the sutta continues. Then the Yaka Kara, Kara means rough, so his body is very rough, right? Said to the Yaka Suciloma. Suciloma is translated needle hair. It is said that Suciloma, his whole body, the hair is so sharp like needles. So whoever sees him gets very frightened by him, right? So that's the story. And of course, the commentary explains in their previous existence what they were and why they were reborn as yakas. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all those stories about that. Now, then the Yaka Kara said to the Yaka Suciloma. So Yaka Kara saw the Buddha sitting there. He said to the Yaka Suciloma, he's an ascetic. He's an ascetic, samana. You know, during the Buddha's time, then you have got the four castes, right? You got the Brahmins, you got the Vaisyas, you got the Sudras, you got the Kshatriyas, like the family that Prince Siddhartha Gautama was born into, right? So the Brahmins are the priestly caste, but during the Buddha's time, there also arose another group of religious seekers. They are called the Samanas, or in Sanskrit, Sramanas, right? Samana. So it is translated as ascetic. So here, Yaka Kara said to the Yaka Suciloma, he's an ascetic. That means referring to the Buddha. He said he's an ascetic. But what did the Suciloma say? Suciloma, the other Yaka, said, no, he's not an ascetic. He's a sham ascetic. Maybe what today you call he a bogus monk, right? He's not really an ascetic. So the Yaka Suciloma said, never mind, let me find out if he's really an ascetic or a sham ascetic, right? So it is believed that if he's a real ascetic, then he's not afraid. He will not be afraid of all these beings like Yakas, Garudas, Kumbandas, and all those. He wouldn't be afraid. So the Yaka Suciloma approached the Blessed One, and having approached, he leaned towards the Blessed One. He tried to be, his body of needles, right? So Suciloma, so he tried to lean toward the Blessed One. But the Blessed One drew back. So, he drew back. Then the Yaka Suciloma said to the Blessed One, that's the Buddha, he said, are you afraid of me? Because, everybody is afraid of him because of his needle hair. He said, are you afraid of me? Ascetic. Then the Buddha says, I'm not afraid of you, friend. So the Buddha calls his Yaka a friend. It's just that your touch is bad, right? Is foul, right? It's bad. Now the commentaries also explain that place where the Buddha was sitting, apparently, well, in Gaya, apparently is a very dirty place. Lots of spittle. People threw garbage. So the Yakas were passing by. So it could also be in that context. He said because you stay there, the Yaka stays there. So you are foul, you are dirty. So he said, no, I'm not afraid of you, because Suciloma tried to go near to the Buddha, right? So the Buddha shifted away. He said, I'm not afraid of you. It's just that your touch is bad. And Suciloma, the Yaka said, okay, I will ask you a question, ascetic. If you won't answer me, I will drive you crazy. I'll drive you insane. And I'll split your heart. I'll break your heart, pull out your heart, right? And grab you by the feet and hurl you across the Ganges. Right? So yakas threatened the Buddha. He said, I'll ask you a question. If you can't answer me, I'm going to either make you crazy, make you mad, or pull out your heart, or grab you by your feet and throw you across the river again. So that's the threat that Suciloma gave the Buddha. Then what did the Buddha explain? But before that, I've got a slide here just to say, we're talking about yakas. Who are these yakas? Right? So yaka is the male, masculine. The female is called yakini. Right? But somehow in the scriptures, usually it is always the male that's been depicted. So, like for example, you go to Thailand, you go to Wat Phra Kiao, the Emerald Buddha. You may see this big statue there. So that's the statue of a yaka, Totsakiriton. So the yakas are a class of nature spirits, usually benevolent, right? So they are benevolent, right? But sometimes they are mischievous or capricious, connected with water, fertility, trees, forests, and wilderness. So the yakas also appear in Hindu and Jain texts. Now, when they appear in Hindu texts, the Hindu texts and Jain texts are usually in Sanskrit, right? So yaka become yaksha, Y-A-K-S-H-A, yaksha. So sometimes you see the word spelled yaksha or yakas. So colloquially, I think local people in Malaysia call them yao kuai. So from the word yaka, you got yaksha, right? So they appear in both Hindu and Jain texts, as well as ancient temples in Southeast Asia. Now, where do we find this yakas been mentioned in the Pali canon or in the scripture? So they are also mentioned. So in the canon, they are the attendants of Vesavana, guardian of the northern quarter who protects the right. Now, some of you may have attended one of the sutta class which I conducted some years back. It was before COVID. It's called the Atanata Sutta. Right? If you remember Atanata Sutta, which is also a parita, right? So the Vesavana is also mentioned. So yakas also refer to 12 heavenly generals who guard Vaisaja Guru, the medicine Buddha. So this is in the Mahayana tradition. So in the Mahayana Buddhist teachings, they also have got yakas, right? But it's of course spelled yakshas because it's in Sanskrit. So they refer to 12 heavenly generals who is Vaisaja Guru. That's the medicine Buddha, right? And the Mahamayuri Vidyarajini Sutra gives a large number of yakas who are invoked to seek the perfection of the Buddha Dharma. So the yakas, as I mentioned early on, they are also benevolent, but some are very mischievous, right? And they do have that wisdom element in them too. So that is why in the Atanata Sutta, which is in the Bhikkha Nikaya Sutta 32, you're familiar with the Chatu Maharaja Jika Devas, right? Isn't it? In the 6 heavenly realms, right? You got Saka, you got Tavatimsa, right? And then you got the Chatu Maharaja Jika Devas. You remember that? So there are 6. So in Buddhist cosmology, they talk about 6 heavenly realms. So the lowest of the 6 realms are what you call the Chatu Maharaja Jika, the four heavenly kings. All right. So they are supposed to guard the 4 quarters. So in the north, that's Vesavana. Then on the west, you got Virupaka. In the east, you got Datarata. And in the south, Viruhaka. But what is important is that each one of them, they are served by a legion of beings. So for the yakas, they are said to serve the king Vesavana. Okay. And then in the south, the Kumbandas. Kumbandas are another class of like semi-divine beings. They're very short, like dwarfs. In the scriptures, they're described as dwarfs. Very, very short beings. Okay. And then on the west, you've got the Nagas, right, which is like the serpents, dragons. So they are the legions that protect the king of the west, Virupaka. And then on the east, you've got the Gandhabas. You have heard of Gandhabas? Gandhabas are celestial musicians. You remember when Prince Siddhartha was about to, his final attempt at enlightenment. He was practicing, and then he heard some sound from the forest, from the lute. Right? They said that first the sound was wasn't very melodious, wasn't very nice. And then when he inquired further, he found that because the strings of that musical instrument on the lute were very tight. So when the strings are very tight, the sound is not melodious. And the second time when he heard the sound again the sound was not pleasant at all. It was not melodious. And this time when he inquired, he found that the sound was the strings were very loose. So when the strings of the musical instrument were very loose, again, you would not get you wouldn't get a perfect sound. The third time when he heard the sound again, this time the sound that comes out from the musical instrument was perfect. And when he inquired, because the strings were not too tight and the strings were not too loose. Right? Now, who played that musical instrument? So it's one of those beings called the Gandhabas. Right? So another category of beings. They're supposed to be like semi-divine beings, right? So they are called the Gandhabas. So this Gandhabas don't confuse the Gandhabas with the being that at the point of conception, right? So that's another meaning for Gandhabas, right? Okay, so yakas is just one of four categories of so-called semi-divine beings that supports each of the four heavenly kings in the lowest of the Buddhist cosmological system. All right, remember there's 6 heavenly realms, right? You got the Chaturmahara, the lowest of the realm. Then going up, you got the Tawatimsa heaven, you got Tusita heaven, you got Yama world, you got Mara world. So you got 6 altogether. Okay, so this is just to let you know that the yakas, they actually figure prominently in the canon.
Brother Benny, just a quick one. Our local Datoks, where do they fall in? Are they yakas?
The Datoks, they are more like tutelatory devas. They are small earthbound devas. There are a lot of these small devas. Some they live on the tree, some they live on the ground. So they are just ordinary devas. All right, so they're just ordinary devas. We usually call them earthbound devas. Right? Okay. Right. So we continue this, and then you remember this. So he said, "I'll ask you a question." He said, Suciloma said, "If you won't answer me, I will drive you crazy. I'll split your heart. I'll grab you by the feet and throw you across the Ganges." So this is the threat from Suciloma. And what did the Buddhas reply? The Buddha's reply is, "I do not see anyone in the world, friend, with his devas, Mara." So Mara, later I'll explain, is also one of the devas, right? And Brahma. In this population, which is ascetics and Brahmins, is devas and humans who could drive me insane or split my heart or grab me by the feet and hurl me across the Ganges. Now, this sentence seems to be like a stop reference, right? Stop phrase, isn't it? Because if you remember, when I was doing the Samyutta Nikaya, I also spoke with you about another discourse called the Alavaka Sutta. Remember Alavaka Sutta? So Alavaka is also the name of another yaka. Just now, remember at the start, I told you that in the book of Connected Discourses, in the Yaka Samyutta, so that whole section, the Buddha had dialogues with 10 different yakas. And one of it is Alavaka, which is the most famous, I think. Many texts have come about that. Okay, so this is like a stop reply, all right? But then so the Buddha said, "Look, I don't think anyone, this is devas or Mara or Brahma, anyone who can drive me insane, who can split my heart, or who can grab me by the feet and hurl me across again." So having said that, then the Buddha told Suciloma, okay, doesn't matter. You want to ask me a question? Go ahead and ask. Whatever question you know. Okay. Then Suciloma addressed the Blessed One in verse. So before that, just Mara. Who is Mara? Okay, just now we talked about the four devas, right? The four heavenly realms. So Mara is the evil one, or Namuchi, that is the opponent of liberation. Now Mara is a deity of the highest heaven of the sense spheres that wields power over the creations of others. So this is very interesting because in Buddhism, Mara is different from, say, the Christian concept of Satan or devil, all right? Whereas Mara actually inhabits one of the 6 heavens. I told you there are 6 heavens, right? You got the Chatu Maharaja Jika, you got the Tavatimsa, you got the Tushita, you got the Yama, you got the Nimitta Vasavati, and now you got the 6th, highest of the 6 heavens, which is the Para Nimitta Vasavati Devas. So they say that in this highest of the 6 heavens, Mara stays in one section of that particular devas, of that deva realm, and he wields creation. Right? So it's a personification of evil and passions of the totality of worldly existence of death. So how is it that this being could be born as Mara? So they say that in previous existence, Mara is someone who likes, he's born in the heavens because of his good deeds, right? But you always have got this selfish and jealousy, envy. He wants, if he does good, he doesn't want other people to do good. Right? So maybe in human existence, some people like to do dana. They like to do dana only they themselves. They do not want other people to benefit from the dana. Right? So people like that, right? Because of their good actions, they're born in the Deva realm. But they always have this attitude of trying to prevent others from doing good. So this is Mara. Okay? So in the Buddhist scriptures, we talk about 4 types of Mara. So the aggregate is also known as Mara, the Kanda Mara. The mental defilements are also known as Mara. Okay? Like for example, when Prince Siddhartha was about to attain enlightenment, sometimes you hear the story of the 3 daughters of Mara. Right? So those are more like mental defilements, trying to tempt the Buddha, but it's not successful, right? Mara also referred to death, and of course to the deity. In other words, the being in the 6th heaven, Devaputta. Right? Okay. So back to the questions. So the Buddha told Suciloma, okay, you have any questions, please ask. So the first question is, what is the source of lust and greed or hatred? What is the source of lust and hatred? Where are born discontent, delight, and hair-raising terror? Having originated from what do the mind's thoughts? Toss one around as boys toss up a crow. Right? Now let's see what is the answer of the Buddha. Okay. The Buddha says lust and hatred have their source here. So later I'll explain what is that. From this are born discontent, delight, and hair-raising terror. Having originated from this, the mind's thoughts toss one around as boys toss up a crow. So here, lust and hatred have the source here. So here, the lust and hatred. So this is part of, for example, the 3 poisons, right? Greed, or sometimes hatred. And then the third one we should not mention is, of course, ignorance, right? Sometimes you see this depicted as, for example, greed is the rooster, then hatred as the snake, and then ignorance as the pig. So the interesting thing about in Buddhism is that when all these are mentioned, the antidote are also provided. So for example, the antidote for greed is generosity, or hatred is loving kindness, ignorance is wisdom. In the second, or in the Adita Pariyaya Sutta, the Buddha says, monks, all is burning. Burning with what? Burning with the fire of lust, with the fire of hate, is the fire of delusion. So in this particular context, it is only two things were mentioned: lust and hatred, and the source here. And I've added in one, ignorance, because these are the three, considered the three poisons, right? So what is the what is the here we refers to? Refers to this existence in itself, all right? In our life, in ourself, right? So it's the here. Okay, so the source is our own self. So we create lust, we create hatred, we create ignorance. So we create the conditions for all this to arise. So it's like here and now. It's not in the past, it's not in the future. Okay? There's a first verse. Second verse, the Buddha replied. Then third verse, the Buddha also said, born from affection, arisen from oneself. So against the here, like the trunk born shoots of the banyan tree, manifold attached to sense pleasures, like a maluva creeper stretched across the woods. So here the Buddha is making use of references to a tree. All right. Now the banyan tree, all right, like a trunk born shoots of the banyan tree. The banyan tree is huge, isn't it? Right? But but then from the tree itself, you have got shoots, right? So again, these are the conditions, right? The conditions from the like all the we create the conditions for greed, for hatred, for ignorance. Okay. And manifold attached to sense pleasures. So like the maluva creeper stretched across the wood. So like a creeper. So the sense pleasures here is referred to like the creeper, right? The maluva creeper. Then here, when we talk about sense pleasures, all right, so the sense pleasures is the self that is attracted to it, isn't it? And then self, from the Buddhist perspective, it talks about, it's always been divided into mind and matter, or form and name, right? So the form, of course, that's the body that we have, our feelings, our perception, mental activities. This is where karma is created in consciousness that knows, right? So we will not go into details of the 5 aggregates, but these 5 aggregates is what constitute the self, what is said to be the here and now. Now, just now we talk about sense pleasures, so we talked about craving, right? So I think here important is, I thought just to highlight 2 words, tanha and chanda, right? Because the word for craving is tanha, and then there's another word called chanda, right? So presentations of Buddhism often lead to the understanding that suffering arises due to desire. So because of that, then the thinking that you shouldn't desire anything. Remember, they said that tanha is desires. So sometimes we read maybe the text, or maybe we listen to a talk. It says that, oh, why does suffering arise? Oh, suffering arises because of desire. So if that's the case, we should not have desire. We shouldn't desire anything. So here, I think we make a distinction. The Buddha spoke of 2 kinds of desire. Desire that arises from ignorance and delusions, which is called tanha and craving, and desire that arises from wisdom and intelligence, called kusala chanda or dhamma chanda, almost simply chanda. So here, I think the point is we have to remember when we say that, like some of the 4 noble truths, he said, what is the? He said the first noble truth is suffering. Second noble truth is the cause of suffering. And then they ask, what is the cause of suffering? The cause of suffering is desire. And what is the end of suffering? Is the end of desire. So that, because of that, some people have the impression that we should not have any desires. Okay, so that is because we didn't understand that the Buddha actually spoke of 2 kinds of desire. So one is desire that arises from ignorance and delusion. So that's craving. So that's one form of desires. But there's another form of desire that arises from wisdom and intelligence. For example, if you don't have a desire to study the Dhamma, you will never make the effort to study the Dhamma. So that's also a desire. But that desire is not tanha. So that desire is called chanda. Right? So the Buddha was quite clear in making the distinction, right, between what is called tanha, which is desire based on ignorance and delusions, and chanda, which is desire that arises from wisdom and intelligence. Okay? So Achan Jayasaro, he explained this by this paragraph. He says, Chanda doesn't mean this exclusively, but in this particular case, I'm using Chanda to mean wise and intelligent desire and motivation. And the Buddha stressed that this is absolutely fundamental to any progress on the Eightfold Path. So we need to have desires, right? So please do not think that, oh, because you hear the somewhere been written that desires are cause of suffering, therefore I want to get rid of all desires. You get rid of only desires that is due to delusion and ignorance. But we must cultivate desires, help us to develop the zeal to study and practice the Dhamma. Right? So, very important point. Yeah? Okay. Then the verse 4, the Buddha said, those who understand their source, they dispel it. Listen, O Yaka. They cross this flood, hard to cross, uncrossed before, for new renewed existence. So the first line is the Buddha, those who understand the source. So what is the source? So the source is the cause. All right. Is it desires or is it tanha or is it chanda? So that's the source. All right. If it is desires that is based on delusion and ignorance, then it will lead to afflictions. But if it is desire that is based on wisdom and, for example, compassion, then that will not lead to afflictions. Right? So that's important. So we need to know the source in that sense. Yeah. So they dispel it. Listen, O Yaka. So they have crossed the floods, hard to cross, uncrossed before, for no renewed existence. So this one, the Buddha always used the simile of the flood. Again, if you remember, before COVID, there was a session where I shared with you the Oga Sutta, the flood, where the Buddha talks about the different types of floods, why we need to cross the flood, and what is this flood that we want to cross. Okay, so here again, the Buddha makes use of this analogy. He says they cross these floods, hard to cross. So this flood will be like this existence that we are in, this ignorance, this delusion. So it's difficult for us to overcome delusion, difficult for us to overcome ignorance. So uncrossed before, because as long as we are not enlightened, we have not crossed it, right? For no renewed existence, right? But if we have crossed it, there will be no more existence, no more renewed existence. Okay, so let's see what are these floods. So in the text, for example, not in this text, but in the Oga Sutta, Buddha talks about the 4 types of floods, which is the flood of existence. When we are born, when we exist, we always have this flood of fear. We always fear death, we fear life. We fear death, we also fear life. Why do we fear life? Because we fear that life will lead to death. So as a result, we fear life. We also fear sickness. We fear old age. We fear failure. We also fear success. Why? Because we are worried that we cannot cling on to our success. When you are successful, the moment you're successful, the next moment is you are worried. How long can I cling on to this success? Right? For example, if you are a businessman, and this year you're very successful in your business, so you have always that fear that, will I be able to sustain my success? Will I not be able to sustain my success? There's also fear of being ridiculed, right? So basically, this is what is called the 8 worldly conditions, right? 8 worldly conditions. So this is the fear of existence. The moment you are born, you cannot run away from it. So it's like a flood. You have been swept away by this flood. Now the other one is flood of delusion. It is said that through our 6 senses we experience the world, but the world actually hides the truth of existence from us. So we don't really see things as they really are, isn't it? We see things through our 6 senses based on our conventional understanding of things. That is why in Buddhism, the Buddha says, for example, we have the practice of vipassana. What is the purpose of vipassana? It is for us to see things as they really are. And to see things as subject to change, they are not satisfactory, and they are non-self. All right? So with the study and the practice and realization of the Dhamma, we are able to overcome this flood of delusion. Okay? Well, flood of ignorance. When you talk about delusion and ignorance, even in Pali, it's slightly different. The delusion in Pali is moha, right? Ignorance is avijja, right? Of helplessness, right? Ignorance, like for example, in the dependent origination itself, we are caught in this cycle of birth and rebirth. We are helpless, right? The moment we are born, all right, we are heading towards death. That's why they say that birth is a forward view of death, while death is a backward view of birth. So that's our, because of our ignorance, we are reborn. When we are born, inevitably, we have no choice, we head towards death. Right? So this kind of flood of ignorance and flood of greed, of hatred, of anger, and of hatred. So the Buddha talks about different types of floods. Now, the closest is in this discourse, right, where I just quote here, where this is again a dialogue, not with the yaka, but with a devata. So this is from the book Connected Discourses, with the whole section where the Buddha had dialogues with the devas. Right? So here, the deva asked the Buddha, "Dear sir, did you cross the flood? And how did you cross the flood?" So the Buddha is supposed to have crossed the flood. Right? And here the Buddha says, by not halting, by not stopping, and by not straining, I crossed the flood. Then the deva asked, "But how is it, dear sir, that by not halting and by not straining, you cross the flood?" The Buddha says, "When I came to a standstill, friend, then I sank. But when I struggled, I got swept away." Right? So it is in this way, friend, that by not halting and by not straining, I cross the flood. Now let's look at this word again. When I came to a standstill, when I try to stand, when I stand, I don't do anything, then I sank. He fell down. All right? But when I struggled, I got swept away. So this one is like our life, for example, here. You can see, like, even in our spiritual practice, sometimes people, they practice too hard, too much energy put in, too much effort. Are they going to achieve? No, isn't it? All right? What happens when they have too much effort? They become restless and worried. Why? They are restless. Why am I not attaining enlightenment yet? Why am I not attaining my jhana states? So they worry. So they are restless. And restlessness and worry, as you know, is one of the 5 hindrances, isn't it? Right? So as long as we are not careful with our efforts, that's why the 4 right efforts, all right, the 4 right efforts, they have to be balanced. Right? They are important, but they must be balanced. And how are they balanced? The balance with mindfulness, isn't it? So you look at the 5, for example, mindfulness is always like in the center. Okay, so too much effort, right, is also not good. What happened to Ananda? Just, when the Buddha passed away, Ananda was not yet fully enlightened, right? So he wanted very much to become enlightened so he could take his seat among the Arahants, right? When the Buddha passed away at the first council. So he tried very hard, very, very hard. He was very restless. He was worried. What's going to happen if I, Buddha has passed away, if I can't be at the Great Assembly. So no matter how hard he tried, his mind was restless. His mind was not at peace. But he could not attain enlightenment, right? And you also read that that's the Samyutta, the 10 fetters, all right? It's only at the stage of the Arahant that restlessness is overcome. But when Ananda felt that, he's not going to make it, so he decided to lie down. Remember the story? lie down to take a rest. As he was lying down, his mind was calm, his mind was relaxed. At that moment, he became enlightened. Right? So restlessness and worry is something that we should be very careful with. Right? So too much. So when you struggle, you get swept away. So it is in this way, friend, that not by not halting and by not straining, I cross the. So the reverse of too much effort is no effort. Right? You just stand still, do nothing, like sloth and torpor, right? Lazy, right? So that's the other extreme. Okay. So after a long time, at last I see a Brahmin who is fully quenched, who by not halting, not straining, has crossed over attachment to the world. Right? So this is from the Atanata Sutra, the first discourse of the Samyutta Nikaya. So you see it's S, capital S, capital N. So capital S, capital N, this is the Samyutta Nikaya. All right, capital S, small n is what we are discussing today. That's in the Sutta Nipata. Right? Okay. So I think that's a short sutta. All right. So if there's any, we have some time, about 20 minutes, so we can have some Q&A. All right. So it's a very short discourse, right? Verse 1, to the Suciloma asking what is the source of lust and hatred. And then verse 2, the Buddha explained lust and hatred started in oneself, in the 5 aggregates in itself. Then what are these lust? And there are antidotes to it. All right, verse 3, then Buddha talks about sense pleasures. Right, sense pleasures, we always thought that is because of our desires, right? But then not all desires are bad. Only desires like cravings, right? That arises from ignorance and delusions, that's bad. But desires that arises from wisdom and intelligence is good. Okay. Then verse 4, the Buddha explained to Suciloma and Kara that he has crossed the floods. So what are the floods? Right. So there are 4 floods: right? Existence, flood of delusion, flood of ignorance, and flood of greed. Okay. And you want to get more details, you can read this in the Atanata Sutra, right, where the Buddha talks about crossing the flood. Right? This is the first discourse. I think we discussed this about 2 years back. Right? Okay, so I will stop here, and if there's anything that you would like to raise, please, I'm happy to share.
Yes. So now we open up to the floor. Any comments or any questions for Brother Benny?
Brother Benny. Benny, go back to that Natukong, how it relates to Malay and the Natukong don't eat pork. You cannot serve pork.
Well, these are cultural things, right? Right. This I don't think you have Natukong back in India, right? So these are supposed to be earth devas. So because of the local customs, so they are supposed to the land. So the respect for the Muslims. So the Natukong, you don't serve pork, right? Being Muslims, right? So all those Natukong, they're just minor devas, land devas. Just like in the trees, you've got tree devas, right? So you got land devas, right? In the cave, you got devas. In the rivers, you got devas. So the devas, there are different categories. Right? The Natukong, I don't think, well, Natukong doesn't appear in the scriptures, right? like in Burma, so they've got the nuts, N-A-T, the nuts, N-A-T-S. So you look at like the Burmese culture, right? So they have the nuts. So these are like the utility, they call it the earth devas, right? Spirit beings, they are found on land and sea and in the air.
Okay, thank you, Sister Penny.
Mm.
Any other questions from the floor or comments?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Sister
Sure.
Suhun.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Brother Benny. Can I ask what does this phrase mean? Toss one around as boys and toss up
Oh,
a
okay.
crow. Thank you.
Okay. This one in the commentaries is explained. They are like the mind's thought. In others, our thoughts, right? When our thoughts are not well guarded, our thoughts are all over the place like a monkey mind. So the simile here is the boys toss up a crow. This is the commentaries explains, that a crow is a bird, right? So the naughty boy, what do? They will tie the feet of the crow, maybe with stones, right? They tie. And then after that, they release the birds. What happened is the bird, of course, with their feet tied with 2 stones, so they cannot fly properly. So they'll be knocking they're knocking, maybe from one place to another place. So that is the way to describe that our mind's thoughts. If our mind is not well guarded, all right, especially our mind is full of lust, it's full of hatred, it's full of ignorance. So our thoughts are scattered all over the place. All right. So just like the simile of a crow, where the feet of the crow have been tied with 2 big stones. How can the crow fly properly? The crow cannot fly properly, right? The crow try to fly, you'll be pulled down by the stones. All right. So as a result, you knock against a tree, knock against some wood and things like that. Yeah. So it's just a simile here. Boys toss up. In other words, talking about naughty boys. And these naughty boys, they tie the feet of the crow to 2 stones. All right. But that is more important is that talking about our mind's thoughts. So what is the aim of Buddhist meditation? So meditation is to teach us to calm our mind. All right. Like for example, if you're doing vipassana, whatever feelings that arise, then you note the feelings. You take note, right? So you do not allow your thoughts to just go anywhere it likes randomly. Just like your mind will not be like the crow, where the feet has been tied with 2 stones. You cannot fly properly because the stone is pulling you down. Right? So our mind should be clear, so that instead of thoughts of craving, we have thoughts of knowledge, thoughts of wisdom that arise. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Please, if there are any specific words, because I did not explain everything, so maybe if you have, you can please highlight.
Brother Benny, just a quick one. You talk about tanha and chanda, right?
Yes.
So is it safe to say that tanha will be a negative form of craving and chanda is a positive form of
but we don't say positive craving, right? Craving by itself is always negative. So maybe the word is desires, right? So what type of desires? So basically we say there are 2 types of desires. One type of desire which is rooted in, for example, in greed, hatred, delusion. One type of desires, right? So this will lead to, for example, sense desires, leads to anger and hatred, leads to delusion. Okay, so that's one type of desire. Then you have another types of desires, which if it is rooted in, for example, kindness, in compassion, in wisdom, then that kind of attitude or that kind of thoughts, actions, will lead you to something positive. So in Buddhist language, we use the word chanda, right? Chanda rather than tanha. So that's about the only difference. But both are actually desires. Right? In one of the discourse, the Buddha was, I think it was Ananda, and you're saying that, for example, you want to go from a place from A to B. If you have no desires to go from A to B, how are you going to be in B? You need the desire, right? To go from A to B. But the moment you are in B, do you still have a desire? No more. The desire is no more there. Because that desire, you're very clear. So it's not like the mind's thoughts running all over the place. So that your desire very clear, you want to go from A to B. But once you're in B, you don't hold on to that desire anymore, right? So likewise, that is why they say that, for example, in one of the discourse, it talks about karma. You know? There's a karma that ends all karma, right? We do good karma, we get good results. Then you get rebirth in a good place, right? You do bad karma, then from the law of karma, you'll be reborn in a bad place. So as long as you do good karma, you continue to be reborn. But when you are reborn, eventually you will have to die, right? So that is not the final solution, right? So there's a karma which ends all karma, right? Okay, it's a karma which ends karma. So your good karma, you got white karma that leads to white results, black karma that leads to black results, white and black karma that leads to white and black results, and neither white nor black karma that leads to neither black nor white result. Okay. If you remember, we also discussed this sutta many years ago. It's called the Dog Ascetic Sutta. It's called the Kukura Vatika Sutta. Right? If you remember, those of you who have attended the sessions. So here the Buddha says that it's important for us to go beyond. The other example is you have heard of this saying, avoid evil, do good, purify the mind, isn't it? So again, yes, it's very important for us to avoid evil. Yes, it's important for us to always do good, but this too by itself is not enough. You need to purify the mind. Then when you purify the mind, then you transcend the doing good and avoiding evil. Right? Okay. So this is where the practice of the Eightfold Path would help us to realize that. Right?
All right. Thank you, Brother Benny. Anyone else from the floor who wants to say something or any questions?
Hello, Brother Benny.
Yeah, Brother Cool.
Yes.
Yes. Now, talking about devas, earthbound devas, you live around trees and all that. Now, what happens if we need to cut down a tree? So, would we be offending the deva if it happen to be living within the vicinity of the tree?
Well, if you believe that there are devas living in that tree, then you still have to chop it down. Then
yes,
then you may have to make some offerings and or just let the devas know that look, we need to chop trees. We need to chop the tree. But yeah.
But then we will not also know whether there are deva living under the tree or not.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it boils down to our intention. If the intention is good, then I suppose it should be. Is it all right to do that? Well, because I'm very afraid of these huge trees. Toppling over and all that near the vicinity of where you stay,
Well, there are different ways of looking at it. Number one, from an environmental perspective, it is bad to chop trees, isn't it? From an environmental perspective, right? We should not chop trees. The trees are part of the ecosystem, right? Okay, so that's one perspective. So we ask ourselves, is it really necessary for us to chop the trees? Number two, like you said, that tree you don't chop, then it may be a hazard. It may fall on the road, it may fall on a passing car or someone walking past it. Okay, then when it becomes a danger, then you may need to chop part of that tree. Okay, if it's a very big tree, all right, then it is said, for example, the devas normally they will rest in the trees, like in the evening they will come down. So it could be the devas could be living in the air, so they will come down in the evening. So there's this belief that you don't chop trees, you don't cut trees, you don't in the evening or at night, because that's the time when the devas would come. And I think there are also some stories in the scriptures that talks about how one layman accidentally chopped off the arm of a deva, chopped the trunk of a tree. All right, so then then maybe you don't cut it in the evening, cut it in the daytime, and before you do that, just make an radiate some loving kindness to whatever living beings that may be on the tree. It may not even be to the devas. It could be some animals living in the tree, right? So when you cut it, you are depriving the natural habitat for these animals, right? So you make a wish that that look, you have no choice. You have to chop the trees because it's posing what you call a danger to people around there. So you hope that they will find another place. So maybe some Buddhists would do some prayers, a few days before they chop the tree. So it kind of give them advance notice. Right? So you'll be surprised. Actually, these beings they can see us, they sense us, they can understand what our intentions are. So if you let them know way in advance, and you know it not because you just want to deprive them of habitat, I think they will understand. Okay. And ultimately, one last point I just want to mention about all these things is, whatever it is, sometimes by accidents we upset the devas or whatever. What is most important is our own precepts, our own virtues. All right. If we are someone who sticks strongly to the Buddha's teaching, we keep strongly to for example, the 5 precepts. Right? It is said that the Dhamma will protect us. Right? So no devas, no maras, anybody will be able to disturb you. So ultimately, it's very important that we keep those precepts very strong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, brother Benny.
Well, you're welcome.
Do we have any questions?
One last one, Brother Benny. Is it wise? You bring children into the not real jungle lah, but like a very like a jungle lah. So is it wise to like not to say scare them or whatever, but to tell them, hey, you don't simply maybe there's a God somewhere here, or you don't simply kick the tree, there's a God somewhere inside here, on the tree or somewhere here.
I will look at it in another way. Rather than instilling fear that there's a God there, you go and pee on the tree, then the God. I think you can put it another way, that we respect nature. We teach them to respect the ecosystem. We teach them to respect ecosystem, because if we understand Buddhist cosmology, there are beings, there are even animals, isn't it? All right. So, for example, the anthill, you teach your young child not to go and pee on the anthill, because you don't want to go and drown the ants. Not to tell them that, oh, you do that, maybe the ants going to bite your private parts. Some people say that, so that your approach is you're instilling fear, but you should be instilling respect that, these are also creatures, they are living beings, So we should respect, we should live and let live, in Australia, you'll be surprised that now, the Aborigines are the ancestral people of the land, right? to them everywhere is sacred, isn't it? So when we go to for example, to the jungles, which is the orang asli, they also stay there, right? So it is their habitat, So we should, rather than instilling fear, we should instill respect, for the ecosystem, for the beings that live in the jungles, that live in the forest, right? It could be seen beings, it could be unseen beings, it doesn't matter, right? Not to frighten them, but to tell them, yeah, they are living beings here. So we respect them, right? So we shouldn't worry about that, okay? Don't frighten them. Huh?
Thank you.
Tell them to respect the land and the ecosystem.
All right. Any more? Last call? Any comments or question that you want to ask?
Brother Benny, how do we cross over this pandemic now?
How do we cross over this pandemic now? Well, make sure you get your third booster. And if there's a fourth one coming, make sure you also get the fourth one. And then having done that, I think the basic standards are, which are common sense, like we already know how the pandemic works, right? Isn't it? The wearing masks, SOP, and more important is as on the physical part, right? The other thing is, if you get it, so hopefully, we build our bodies, our what do they call it, our natural immunity, right? Okay, I don't think you can find any specific answers from the scriptures, but I think during the Buddha's time, I'm not sure if there's, well, like, where was it, in the Atanata Sutra, Buddha talks about some I wouldn't even call it a pandemic. There was some like cholera or something. So be clean, I suppose.
Stand still, let go.
I think more important is not to fear the pandemic. Not to fear the pandemic. If it comes, it comes, but eventually it will go away. And many people are saying now the Omicron, probably you'll be the last one already.
Not deadly.
No, it's
not deadly.
It's not deadly. Like what, yesterday, 20,000 cases.
Yeah.
The category 1, 2, and 3 at the bulk of it is only about less than, I don't know, about maybe 100 people in category 3, 4, and 5. So if we have to get it, we get it. Then we have the natural immunity.
Okay.
All right.
Stand still, let go. Thank you.
Right. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. If we don't have, then we will close this session.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Just give me a moment. Can you let me share screen, brother?
Sure.
Okay. A very interesting sutta discussion we had today, and we hope you all have gained much wisdom by listening to the Dhamma today. And we will share today's slide on the WhatsApp group. So later. A very big thank you to Brother Benny for your fascinating insight to the Suciloma Sutta. Even though I could see you are feeling slightly under the weather today, we hope you will feel better soon.
Yeah. Just some itchy throat.